Now, this is just something that was taught to me by a coach. So obviously, I've had partners who say, hey, yes, I want to go all out, or I want to do something, at a very high pace. And even then, I'll go about 75%. But I usually like to go about 50% in training, and that's if I'm kicking it up all the way, even going against other high-level people at my level, like other brown belts, the black belts, things like that. I like to go about 50% because 50% tells me I'm not using more strength than technique.
Right.
If you're going above 50%, you're using more strength than technique, so I'm really not learning. And I always come to practice to learn. So, if you're going above that, you're really doing yourself a disservice and not truly gauging where you're at. If anyone can fend someone off with some strength, if you're a little bit bigger, you're a little bit younger, a little bit stronger than someone, and you use strength, you didn't learn anything. You might as well have gone to a CrossFit class that day because you wanted to develop your strength or something. But to truly develop your technique is to know when you're under fire, when things are getting hard, that's when you turn your technique on and you really try and make those things you've learned shine and apply them, because everyone can do something when they're fresh as well, but when you're tired and you're under fire, that's when things are, it's just a little harder to pull things off. So I truly, just for myself, I'd say I don't like to go any harder than 50%. Now other people may have different schools of thought on that. And, like I said, everyone has their opinion, and every opinion is valued, because obviously people have achieved high levels of success in the sport, all by different ways. But just from my own personal understanding, I say 50%.
And you were talking about this, and I want to keep going with the same thought now that we're in that vein. So it's fundamentally like every Monday, like on my Monday, Wednesday, Friday training days, the same drills, the same sweeps, the same, everything. Now, you're a long arm, long leg guy like me. How do you, let's start with your arms. How do you keep your arms from staying an asset and not being something? This is a problem with me because you've got the reach. You want to reach out and grab your guy. How do you stay focused on not falling into bad habits?
Now, and obviously, well, it's the same as anything. Bad habits, they get trained out of you.
Right.
They always say you started out as a piece of Swiss cheese, and all you do in the end is become a better piece of Swiss cheese with less holes. So, because no one can ever be perfect. You even see black belts, they get caught at the highest level by other black belts. So no one's perfect. But still, for you saying just in the term of reaching, I've always been taught to lead with my hip as well. While I pass, guard, I do other things like that, because obviously I had to learn a lot in my white belt that, hey, Brandon, reaching with these big old flipper arms is not exactly the best method. So, I had to knock that out of my game for a while. And even it's just like what I said earlier about patience. That's one thing I've really developed and I've really learned in the sport is to be patient, not try and rush things, and understand there's always a more efficient way to get to what you want. You're never going to get somewhere in one step, and you shouldn't expect to. If you get somewhere in one step, that means you're not fighting people who are challenging, and you're not fighting people who understand the art. And both of those are detrimental to your overall success. So I believe that patience is just everything in the sport. It will teach you and help you in all aspects.
Okay, so how do you be – this is a very good follow-up question, and I guess it's just gratuitously for my own good. How do you – I believe in counterpunching. So what we're talking about is counter-reacting jiu-jitsu, but not being a staller. I mean, there's got to be a fine line there between someone who's just stalling or somebody who's waiting for an action. Is it completely an appropriate game plan to be somebody waiting for somebody to take the action so that I can react?
Okay. Now, only to a certain
By the way, this isn't a and I'm with you on this. This is not a popular theory at my school. They're very much react first, get the points, put on the gas, and then look back over your shoulder.
Yeah. So I have a friend, and obviously I would not mention his name. I would not, do that to him on any kind of radio broadcast. But, he's a notorious staller, and he's gotten better about it, and he's been more proactive as of late, and really he's had some good matches. Can't even say what belt rank he's at, I don't want to give it away. But early on in his career, he would stall people and almost bore them to death, to where the person would just make a mistake, and he would win the match just, in the last minute or so. I've never looked at that as a good method, because on the street, even if someone has a knife or, a gun, that's not the nature. That's something that sport invented, is to stall someone out. And, and also I feel like it inhibits your learning. Even if you were to lose a match, that you were to say, hey, I could stall this whole match, or I might lose this match by 2 points or something, but I will learn so much, and eventually I will outgrow this person, opposed to, hey, I can stall this person out who might know more than me, get the win, but really I didn't get all the information I need to get, and it'll show up later in my career. I would rather get all the bad jitters out early on in my jiu-jitsu career, and then once I'm a black belt, once I'm at that highest level, be able to do everything and bring everything together. Now, then, like I said, going back to the street aspect, you're not going to stall out somebody with a knife or a gun. So
yeah, but I've also got the punch in my arsenal if I'm on the street, which I understand that. And MMA itself is a style. I think that's why traditional BJJ guys have never done very well in the octagon. Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face, and certainly we've seen that with the very best in judo and the very best in Brazilian jiu-jitsu getting into the octagon. That first punch in the face is very eye-opening, and I say this, and I'm sure you can appreciate this, you've got to enjoy getting hit. Like, part of you, if you're really going to be an MMA fighter, you got to be into the sort of the taste like candy action of getting hit. You kind of have to like that little black splotch that hits the side of your eye when somebody hits your head. You have to be into it, because if you don't, you're going to be like Ronda, and your career is over.
Oh yeah, and obviously it's unfortunate. Okay, so I have to get my own qualms about Ronda Rousey out. It's unfortunate to see so many people look so negatively on one person, but at the same time, I'm very huge against violence between men and women, and just for her to say the fact that she would fight Floyd Mayweather and even encourage that and spread that among the community of martial arts, I just feel like it puts such a bad taste in so many people's mouths to even consider men fighting women or women fighting men. I just feel like it brought a very ugly aspect to the sport. That's disregarding her, whether she wanted to or not shake people's hands, whether she wanted to or not act a certain way or cocky, and she really never taunted opponents ever, but just to bring that balance between men and women, it just put a really bad taste in my mouth about the sport. So I personally have never been a big fan of hers. I respect what she's done. You can't help but respect what she's done, and I bet every fighter in the UFC who has a bigger fight purse now has to respect what she's done. But just with the things she said in that regard, never been a huge fan. But I have also said she's never had much boxing or head movement, and finally it got exposed. So
sure.
I can't say I'm necessarily happy about that. I'm never happy to see someone's downfall. I always wish the best on people. But I am happy that now people's eyes are opened, I guess, and that's what I could say. Now that they understand, hey, you can't just be tougher than the other person. You actually do need skills and multiple assets.
Well, and I think we've seen that across the board. There are certain guys throughout the history. Take someone as simple as Robert Drysdale. I don't think any of us are going to doubt him in a gi, ever.
No.
You don't want to see Robert Drysdale in a dark alley in a gi. Same with BJ Penn. You don't want to see him in a dark alley in a gi. Like, it's a bad day. Out of the gi, probably I don't want to see him in the dark alley either. But now punching comes into play. Okay, and on BJ it exposes his speed and his timing. It changes his game, and it forces him to be a stand-up guy, which he's not. In Robert's case, I know Robert. I don't know him personally or on that level, but certainly by watching him in the cage, he didn't enjoy getting hit. I think it was something that he did not expect. I saw it with somebody like Dean Lister, and we're talking all-world multi-time champions. These guys, there's no doubt about their grappling skills. Same thing for Ronda. All-world, an Olympic champion. I don't doubt her grappling. But boy, that punch in the face just changes it so dramatically.
It really does.
And
me early on when I started training, I hated getting punched. Now, like you said, I have developed that little sick bastard candy feeling, It does feel kind of good now.
You have to be into. I think there's got to be a part of you as a human being, and I don't think boxers ever get enough credit. You're looking straight into that punch and accepting it. so that you can move forward and do something else about it. That's crazy. For as much boxing as I've taken.
Confidence.
The what?
In boxing, I believe it's a confidence in boxing as well. And when you said, hey, you have to move forward and deliver what you have, early in boxing, a lot of guys, they might not know so much about footwork, or they might not know as many combinations as they need to know. And it's hard to have more faith in your hands than someone who knows more than you. But I feel like same as boxing is Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Once you develop that style, once you develop your game, you finally know, and it's easier to accept that punch because you're like, hey, I know what I'm about to give back to you, and it gives you more of a will to hang on to give it back to somebody.
Well, and it applies out on the street. I had an incident this summer at a concert where a drunk guy stepped on my foot and I said something and my girlfriend walked away, and I turned my head, and before I turned back to address the individual, he threw a punch. Now, mind you, he was 5'6" and hitting up at me at 6'2", and he caught me clean on the chin. It didn't stop my head from turning. It didn't put me to a knee. It didn't even knock my glasses off my face. I was more amused by it than anything else, and I think it terrified the crap out of him. And I'm sure he's had a lot of confidence in that punch up until that moment. But he threw it with what he had. And he had it with that drunk superpower in his mind. And he just ran off as quick as he could. Because I just stood there and I took it and looked at him. And did you hit me? And that's because I've been hit by big hitters. I know what a big hit looks like. There should be a little bit of black on the corner of your brain should bounce across the side of your head a little bit on the inside. What direction do you want to go in the future? Is it more, do you want to do, because this is now a thing. I've now seen on the amateur level with something like Tough Enough out of Vegas, where they're now mixing in submission grappling. What direction do you want to take your future?
Now, I'd like to take my future in a mixed martial arts direction. And it's only because, like I said, I've done plenty of mixed martial arts sparring during my upbringing in the sport. I've never, and obviously always been a fan of it as well, and had a good mind for it. I'm a very intelligent fighter. I have a reach for fighting as well. Even though I'm 6'4", I have the reach of someone who's 6'9". So, my reach is like 81.5 inches. So, I'm built well for the sport of MMA. But, definitely, it's just my passion and love for grappling. Even my coach, George, I'm sorry, I should never say Coach George, just say Professor George.
Professor George.
But he would talk to me and he would say, Brandon, he's like, you shouldn't even look towards fighting so much. He's like, you have a great talent for jiu-jitsu. He's like, you may be able to do greater things than you realize with it. So, and obviously you always think, oh, my coach just wants me to stay with this. He just wants me to, do the things, he wants to tell me, and, may want whatever notoriety that comes later or this or that. But really, he's a person who cares about you as an individual. He cares about your overall development. And he's had plenty of students who live in different countries. My friend Tommy lives out in Thailand, whether it's a different state. Chris Mears' wife, he lives in Colorado. But, these guys still come back to him for belt promotions. They still come back to him, no matter what. Whether they are training under him at the sport or whether they are training him at the moment or they're not training underneath him, you still come back to him, and you can't help but take his roots out of you. I would never tell somebody, oh, I didn't train under George. No, I'm so proud that I've had the honor and privilege to train underneath that man, because he's done so many things for my life,
Absolutely.
For my mind, and so in that aspect, I will say, I'm 100% for, let me tell you, I don't ever tell people not to travel. You always want different looks, because even inside your own gym, sometimes people respect you too much. But, you should always give credit back to the people who got you into the sport.
I completely agree. And I get asked a lot because of doing this show, and I get asked all the time. And I'm unique. I believe that Sammy, my professor, my guy, he believes in it more than I'm physically capable of doing it. Like, my heart and him together are destroying my body. Like, I'm some kind of rocket on re-entry that between my heart and him, I'm going to shake apart at the seams. Like, I have injuries that I can't even conceive of. Like, I don't ever think I'm going to get over the rotator cuff injury on my left shoulder unless I take time off. But I have to keep going because I'm 6 weeks out from pan. And that means my conditioning has to be through the roof.